The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Dinesh D'Souza, we're speaking to. He's a scholar. He's been studying Barack Obama since the very beginning. Dinesh, we have a question here in Massachusetts. Maybe people outside Massachusetts don't have it so much, but here's this guy who writes this lyrical book, like you said, Dreams from My Father, and about his family and all this kind of thing, and yet he's got two an aunt and an uncle here, both illegal aliens, or were illegal aliens till they were granted asylum. One of them, Andy Zatuni, never worked. The other one, Uncle Omar, has pretty much worked steadily all these years he's been in the country illegally. Why do you think Obama has no connection to them, especially when he's down here on the vineyard every summer for sometimes for 2-3 weeks, and he doesn't ever go see these people? What's the story with how do you think it's possible that his family, the father on his birth certificate, is not his real father?
I don't think that's the reason. There's a phrase attributed, I believe, to Jonathan Swift. I hate mankind, Swift said, but I love Tom, Dick, and Harry. Now, what Swift is saying is that he doesn't generalize, but he likes people. I think Obama's the opposite. He's always talking about mankind and helping the poor, but actual people who are in his life, he treats very badly. He's got a brother, half-brother, George, whom we interviewed in 2016, who's living in the Huruma slum of Nairobi, one of the most unsafe and it's worse than the Indian shanty towns. He's got an aunt who sells coal on the street. This is his father's sister, so we're not talking about some distant relative. You mentioned the relatives in Boston. Ironically, like all this, Obama says America's a family, we got to help each other, but he doesn't help his own family.
Right. He doesn't even invite him to visit him, when he's on vacation.
Well, remarkably, he has a half-brother, Mark, who lives in China. And this is a guy who's actually made something of himself. And Obama writes about Mark, in his own book, Dreams from My Father. It's about 3 pages in that book. Well, recently, Obama publicly said, I never met the guy. I just met him like last year. And this is actually preposterous. And not only has Obama met him in 1988, but he writes about him at some length in his own book. So you're dealing with a very bizarre guy in the White House. And
well, this is why people wonder about who wrote the book. I mean, I don't know how much of a sports fan you are, but Pete Rose, has more hits than anybody else in Major League Baseball. He gambled; they won't let him into the Hall of Fame. And he had an autobiography come out a few years ago, and he later claimed, I was misquoted in my own autobiography, and there were lies in there. And then they said, well, didn't you read your autobiography? And he said, no, I never read my own autobiography. And it seems like this is one of those cases, isn't it? I mean, again...
I don't think so, Holly. I don't think so, because, remember, Pete Rose is a world-famous guy, and, a guy like that's going to hire a ghostwriter. Now, remember, Obama wrote his autobiography I published it first in 1995. He was 34 years old. He was a state senator. So it's not that normal at that stage to be able to go find a big ghostwriter and have somebody who cares about your life. Why would somebody even want to ghostwrite your book? You're not Pete Rose. So there's a mystery here. And I think part of what's interesting about Obama is how many black holes there are in this guy's history and past. And I find it really scandalous, that these are not investigated. I mean, we have a press that has essentially become a lapdog press, and the normal checks that we have on government are just not working in the age of Obama.
Well, how about another indication of that black hole is Uncle Omar. Remember, he said I never spent any time with Uncle Omar. And then Uncle Omar said when he was up before the immigration judge last year, he said, of course he spent some time here. When he first came to Cambridge to go to Harvard Law School, he crashed on my couch for a few weeks. Remember this? And,
of course I do.
And finally, Obama had to admit that he was right and that he had not been telling the truth.
Well, I ran into this guy, Wayne Allen Root, who's a classmate of Obama's at Columbia. And this guy has been trying to find somebody in his class who knew Obama. Now, think about this. Obama is African-American. He's a visible guy. He was active. So here's the question. How come not a single classmate has surfaced who knew Obama, went to class with him, stayed with him, ate with him. And recently, this alumnus, went to their class reunion, and he said, listen, I'm just going to do a systematic survey of all the people here and just ask them, did you know, can you remember Barack Obama? And he told me there's not a single person who could. Not one.
Not one.
Not one. So that's, this...
Is his name, is his picture in the yearbook?
His picture's not in the yearbook, as far as I know.
I mean, I know your picture doesn't have to be in the yearbook, but that would be one bit of proof that he was there.
I don't actually not believe that he went to Columbia. I just think it's very odd. What was he doing when he was there? How did he actually get in? I mean, he was a student at Occidental College. Now, how do you transfer from Occidental College into an Ivy League university? How does that happen? I'm, by the way, I was born in the same year as Obama. I graduated from Dartmouth the same year he graduated from Columbia. I can tell you that it is not normal practice for Ivy League colleges to take kids who go to other schools and then give them Ivy League degrees. That's extremely unusual, and no one has ever explained to me how it's happened.
Well, one theory, of course, is that he got into Occidental and then Columbia, and maybe even Harvard Law School after that, by claiming that he was a foreign student, by claiming that he was born in another country, right?
Well, I've heard that, but I don't even see how that changes the picture. I mean, Ivy League colleges jealously guard their degrees. That's the whole value of going to those colleges, and the selectivity of them is all based on the idea that, you went to Harvard. So if Harvard starts taking kids from, Tulsa Community College and Oklahoma State and Occidental, it will cease to be Harvard. That's why they don't do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so who do you think was his rabbi, as they say?
I don't really know. I mean, I don't claim to be. Some of this stuff just needs to be investigated. And this, to me, is the great sort of shame of, the New York Times and all the people who have the resources to look into this stuff, but apparently don't bother because they're all preoccupied with Christie and the bridge. So I think that part of what's going on in our politics, unfortunately, is the government that actually is in power is not being put under a lens or a microscope. And certainly, normally we don't check out people's backgrounds, but we are dealing here with the President of the United States. So all of this should have been looked at a long time ago, and it's remarkable it still is an open question.
Do you believe he was born in the United States?
I do.
You do? You believe that long-form birth certificate?
Well, it's not that I believe the birth certificate. Look at it this way. This is why I believe it. I mean, Barack Obama Sr. comes to the United States as an exchange student, as a foreign student with no money. He meets a white girl. He gets her pregnant, and she is having a kid. Now, to me, it makes no sense that they would go back to Kenya to have the kid. First of all, they probably would want the kid to be an American citizen. Second of all, I can assure you that Barack Sr. did not have the money to fly back to Kenya and fly back again to the United States. He had to raise money from missionaries to make the trip in the first place. So, Look, I mean, I'm not an expert on this issue, but my gut tells me, and based on what I know, that I don't think the birther thing really works.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is that you're right. The research has been so pathetic on this guy. I mean, I think I may have mentioned this to you when we were talking in Tampa in 2012, but here's this book, Dreams from My Father. It sold millions of copies. It came out, and everybody supposedly read it, and certainly everybody in the press corps was supposed to have read it. But then 4 years later, Moranis comes out with a book, and he comes out with the fact that Barack Obama was eating dogs when he was a kid in Indonesia. And it's not like it's a big secret or anything. It's in Dreams from My Father. But apparently no journalist had bothered to read the damn book.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.